Minister, Irish neutrality is a foreign policy tradition that stretches back over centuries. Irish political leaders from Wolfe Tone, O'Connell, James Connolly have advocated neutrality as the best way to serve the common good and to oppose militarism in society. So small countries have always been naturally sceptical of big military blocs because big military blocs orientate their foreign policy around their own national interests, which normally means their economic interests. And a perfect example of this has been the actions of the US in the Middle East. Also, small countries realise that when they're members of large military blocs, they have very little influence over the direction of those military blocs. So in other words, they have to participate in the wars, but they really don't have a say over what wars are actually fought whatsoever. And actually, Irish neutrality has served us very, very well. You can just think of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria and Libya as perfect examples of wars we were very good to stay out of, very logical to stay out of. Now, but I will say that obviously you don't have to be neutral in terms of identifying what is right and wrong and helping countries, even though you're militarily neutral. And that's why it's up to this country to really help in terms of the Russian-Ukraine conflict and obviously the Israel-Gaza conflict as well. But one of the problems I have with the government on this is, despite the fact that we have built up a massive, let's say, competency internationally for being an honest broker due to the fact that we are neutral and to the good works that we have done through the UN over the years, this government has failed to utilise that competency in any way around the Israeli-Gaza war. So I've asked the Taoiseach, the Taoiseach and Minister Simon Harris, what actions, what material offers have they made to Israel or to the Palestinian Authority to act as a mediator, an interlocutor or a facilitator for peace? And all three representatives of the government said they've done none. They have made no offer. And I asked, would they make an offer into the future? And they said, no, they're not going to make an offer. And actually, Simon Harris mentioned that no offer could be made until there's a ceasefire, which is a nonsense. Peace negotiations and peace processes start before there are ceasefires. So that's a major issue. So we can actually be an agent, an active neutrality agent in terms of bringing peace to the world. I'm not saying that Israel would say yes to our offer, but I do think that as a country we should be closing down any excuse they have for not participating in peace talks. We should be pushing through the European Union in relation to trying to achieve, pushing the European Union to try to make them create an international peace conference as well. But the European Union, unfortunately, are at sixes and sevens on this particular conflict. Now, when the Taoiseach, or the Taoiseach mentioned earlier that he was very focused on strengthening our security in this country, I have to say I laughed out loud today because the government's record on the security of this country is worse than useless. The biggest threats to our defence forces at the moment is government policy. We have an exodus of personnel from the defence forces currently because of the government's actions. We have, I think, personnel is down to 7,500 at the moment in the Army, the Navy and the Air Corps. So this exodus is being caused by the government's actions in terms of pay conditions and terms of work. And simply, if you want to have people work for you, you need to treat them right. You need to give them a decent wage. And the government's refusing to do that. So much so now that we can only put 2 ships on the high seas at the moment. We cannot monitor our land, our sea or our cyberspace due to the fact that this government has stood idly by. This government is the biggest threat to our security. And if it meant business in terms of our security, it would significantly invest in our defence forces. Gur Magat.